Hello, dear friends. We are so glad you're here to learn about the reality of dissociative identity disorder. Welcome to Season 3. We are your hosts, Drew
and Garden System,
a couple of multiples.
We are a married couple, and we both have dissociative identity disorder. Did you know that 120 million people across the globe live with dissociative identity disorder and are often misdiagnosed for 6 to 12 years?
We hope to help educate and dispel myths about DID to help people find the right diagnosis and appropriate treatment as quickly as possible.
Please visit acoupleofmultiples.com and sign up for our mailing list to stay up to date with our podcast, our private paid online DID community called Hearts Multiplied, and to book consultations.
That's right. Drew and Garden System are now offering consultation to help educate and support those living with and treating dissociative identity disorder. You can book an appointment with either Garden System or both Drew and Garden System right from our website, acoupleofmultiples.com.
We hope you enjoy this episode and learn something new.
We appreciate all of our reviews, and we love to hear from you, dear listener, about what you enjoyed the most. We are honored to have multiple sponsors for Season 3. You can find links to each sponsor's webpage in the show notes of every episode and on our website under the Listen to Our Podcast tab. The Institute for Creative Mindfulness, one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, is directed by Dr. Jamie Plus Marich, the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural and offers the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We felt so validated when we were able to authentically participate in this training as Garden System. Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers.
Bearings therapy is different from anything you've ever tried. You spend your nights worrying about whether you did the right thing, whether you're failing your family, how you and your spouse don't connect anymore, and those things haunt you at night.
You don't feel comfortable talking to anyone. A, you don't want to relive it, and B, you're not interested in talking about your garbage. You may feel lost right now, but I'll be your compass. Get your bearings. Call me today, 214-892-2158. As a certified internal family systems licensed therapist, Tiffany Morgan, owner of Holistic Self-Healing Psychotherapy, specializes in working with dissociative identities through IFS and sculpting.
Known affectionately as Ocean, she brings lived experience with dissociative identities and anorexia, offering consulting, psychotherapy, training, and authoring a book on personal and professional experiences in these areas.
Visit www.tiffanycobb with 2 B's, Morgan.com. www.tiffanycobbmorgan.com or call 520-582-9313 for more information.
Alex Amar, LCSW, offers creative art classes and series including the Creative Journal, Soul Collage, and Altered Books, all on the Zoom platform exclusively for people living with dissociation.
The 8-week winter series of the Creative Journal begins at the end of November. For more information, check out her website at alexamar.com, ALIXAMAR.com, or her Facebook page, Dissociative Creative Explorations.
Welcome, dear friends, to this uplifting guest interview with Gianu System and her husband, Jonathan.
Jenna, which you can find at Gianu System, and Jonathan, who is at Splendid_supporter, were married for over 15 years before they knew that Jenna wasn't just Jenna. She was part of a system of alters sharing one body.
As the system made itself known, Jonathan took a proactive role in learning about the disorder and how best to support them in healing. His acceptance and insight have been a key part of their healing journey.
So welcome, Gianu System and Jonathan. We feel so honored to have you both here today.
Thank you for inviting us to come. This is great.
So happy to be on.
Aw, thank you. So we would love to hear how you two met and how you figured out that DID was a part of the picture.
So how we met is a wild ride.
It is. That's always an interesting story.
Yeah. The short answer is we met in church.
That's a far less interesting answer, though.
It is.
We actually met. Well, we didn't meet. She saw me for the first time at my first wedding.
Oh, okay.
So it was very interesting. That was very short. Like 6 weeks after I got married, my wife left me for somebody that she worked with that she had been with prior to us getting married. So that was a whole interesting thing. But she was in the process of like her and her mom had a discussion about like
me. So
what she finds attractive.
Yeah. And I was like, it's not the everybody's type. When I see someone I find attractive, I'll point them out. That'll be the easier way. Mm-hmm. So we had been invited to this wedding. I didn't know the guy. He had been since we had started going to the church, Jonathan had been at college. So I was friends with his sister and my mom was friends with his mom, which is how we got invited to the wedding. Okay. And so I walk in the doors and I see this guy and I elbow my mom and I was like, Mom, that's the kind of guy I find attractive. And she goes, Jen, that's the groom. And I was like, no, all the good ones are taken, as you do.
Yep.
Right.
And
of course it's the groom, right?
right. The one guy I've seen in months that I'm like, aha. Mm-hmm. And so when his wife left him, he came back up to Ohio, was where we were at the time. Mm-hmm. And I thought the last thing he needs is some girl hanging around. So I set about avoiding him, which seemed very logical to me. Also, don't deal well with emotions. And I found him incredibly attractive. And I was like, oh, that's bad.
Cut that off.
Yep, let's not do that.
And everybody, when I came back, everybody was saying, oh, you should date Jenna because she's such a nice girl. And I'm just like, I don't want to date anybody right now. I've just been through all this. And so I was kind of avoiding her too. But in the midst of us avoiding people along with a very crafty youth pastor, we ended up going out on our first date in November, and then by March we were married.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. Like, I really relate to the whole I just got to avoid everything and just walk away. Like, that just resonated. Yeah. It's kind of the definition of dissociation, huh?
Right. Yeah.
I'm feeling things. Panic.
Yes.
So how'd you figure out DID was part of the equation here?
Oh, that took a while. So we were married 15 years. Yep. So what I hadn't recognized is like my emotional spectrum was like happy, content, nothing, sad, depressed. That's like my emotional range pretty much. And so, but like I felt like I was plenty emotional. I felt things. And then about 15 years in, there was a trigger, and to this day, I don't remember what it was. Like that, I woke up one morning and the whole weekend was gone. I couldn't remember what had happened, and I was completely numb. And I'm normally very expressive, so like it was a big change for me going from very expressive to just no affect at all. And Jonathan was concerned. And I was as concerned as you can be logically, without feeling feelings. I was like, yeah, this is not good or healthy or normal. I think I should see a therapist. So that started my therapy journey. And the first sit down with a therapist, I got so triggered, which I didn't know that's what that was. I'm not used to emotions or whatever these things are.
Yeah.
Right. That they were like, do you think maybe your husband would be okay coming the next time? And I was like, oh, sure. And so, he signed the little forms and he would come, and whenever I would get very triggered, he would just put his hand on me and it would ground me. And I was able to then like begin to interact with emotions and just start tiptoeing in. And it was like a year of therapy before my system made itself apparent to us.
3 times a week. We went to therapy together for a year. And it took that long for her to get stable enough to where her parts felt comfortable, making themselves known.
Yeah.
It is a process to get there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's really cool that you had your person for 15 years already, and he was able to be there with you during this discovery. That's amazing.
I think that me being in therapy with her is the only thing that made that able to happen, because I was taking this journey with her as she was finding out more about herself. I was finding out more about me as well.
Yeah.
I was learning language, like with internal family systems and things like that, and grounding. And so when she called me, I was at work, she called me and she said, like, I'm hearing a voice in my head and it's screaming at me and I don't know what to do. And I left work and I came home and my mind goes to IFS stuff. And I was like, have you tried talking to her and seeing why she's angry? And she was like, no, I don't want to encourage it. But that was, I think just being on that journey together for that long made it to where it was kind of more of an easy transition than if she would have been doing this all by herself. And then bringing me in when that happened. I think it probably would have been maybe a different response.
Yeah. It'd probably be more jarring, but because it all made sense to him with the stuff we'd been learning. Like, this wasn't something that was scary or new. This was like, oh, okay. We've been given tools to walk through this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's such an important point, and I really hope that our listeners and therapists listening kind of hear that, because that is really important. There's a lot of people that don't get this diagnosis till much later in life, so they have been married for a long time and they have a lot of things going on, and like, to get through that, like, that's really important to know how important it is for that supporting person to be on the journey with us, basically.
Yes.
Thank you.
How do you believe your relationship is different from others, considering one of you has DID?
So many ways.
So I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
And when I took the test, I think it was Myers-Briggs test or something.
Right.
You score, there's like 30 points in each category or whatever.
And it's on a spectrum of introversion to extroversion.
Yep. So I scored a perfect 30 on extroversion.
Oh, nice.
And
A+.
My therapist told me I'd never seen somebody who scored a perfect 30 before. So I really enjoy people. And so how cool is it that you get to be married to, a dozen of them all at the same time? For me, it was I got to know all these people, and I got to know parts of my wife that I never knew before, and hear stories that I never heard before. And, all these things that were brought into it. And so for me, I look at it and I go, after 15 years of marriage, how many people are still finding out things about their partner, And so here we are, almost in March will be 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I still am learning about her. And so to me, and it's just it's probably just my personality, but to me, like that's really special to me that I am in a relationship where I am still able to actively learn new things about my partner every day.
No.
I think that's a beautiful
That's
reframe
so beautiful.
for supporters out there to like think of it in that way. Like you're not losing anything, you're gaining so much more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and on my perspective, like I think a lot of people in more neurotypical relationships have the you know, privilege of not having to delve deep and not having to hold complex views of each other, and that's not the something that we can do. Like there's when you have parts of you that don't want to be romantic in any way, maybe don't like your partner, parts that are children, with people with different sexual orientations and gender, like you have to be willing to communicate and adjust and have to have your own support system outside of your partner. Like it really challenges you. If you're just kind of a go with the flow person, you can go with the flow, but you're going to have to be very anchored in support to navigate it well.
So true.
It really is. So Jonathan, what is the experience like for you with Gianu System having multiple selves, and how would you describe the relationship you have with her selves?
Yeah. That definitely varies drastically depending on who it is. But it's, and I try to tell supporters this anytime they're asking for advice or whatever. I always say the things that you have with your spouse do not transfer to everybody. They're not universal, truths. That you're truly working with different individuals, and it's something where when you meet somebody for the first time, you don't have the discussions with them or do the things with them that you discuss and do with people that you've known all your life. So it's something where, it's really like when a new alter presents themselves, it's okay. Now I need to get to know them, and some were easier. E was the first one that came out, and E was very critical of Jenna and of her decisions, largely circling around her wardrobe.
Yes.
And coming from purity culture and things, there were a lot of Jenna was wearing clothes that were several sizes too big, and so E was like a size 10. I can't believe you're wearing a size 10, and so you need to be wearing clothes that are your size, and so when she was like ranting on about that, I was able to go, yeah, I've been trying to tell her this for a while, that she just needs to wear clothes that actually fit her. And so E and I went through her closet together, and that was a lot of fun.
They bonded over
so
that.
We bonded over
Points
that.
of connection.
Yep.
Yes.
So, but then there was JA, and JA was not only a lesbian, so she had no attraction to me whatsoever, but also very anti-men as well, where men were not safe, and could not believe that Jenna would put herself in danger to the point of living with a man. And so that one was a lot harder. That was something where there's no amount of saying, hey, I'm a safe person, that is going to make someone feel safe when that has not been their experience. And so it was consistency, and it took a lot of it. It took 6 months of announcing my presence when I needed to walk through a room that she was in, and giving her that much space where I was like, hey, I need to go from the living room to the laundry room, and I'm going to have to pass through the kitchen, but I'll stay on the far side of it before I walk through. Because if I didn't do that, she would visibly start shaking. She was so nervous, afraid,
traumatized,
angry, all of it, that I was that close to her. And so from there, about 6 months in, we were able to be in the same room together on separate couches.
Yes.
And from there, like, able to ride in the car together where we would both be in the front seats. And eventually about a year and a half in, it's kind of interesting how it happened, but we were parasailing in Florida, which
parasailing was Jenna's idea, now mind you, but like the system, like heights and adventure are fun, all except for one, which we were like, we found out by accident that JA was afraid of heights.
Me too.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be up there either.
So we're up there, and so because this is a fun experience for everybody, we were practicing. We had like kind of pretty well mastered a voluntary switch. So we're like pulling people forward so that everyone can experience it. And I think it was Anthony. Mm-hmm. It was one of the guys, and
Anthony too.
He was like, "Oh man, JA would hate this." Well, because we had been working on pulling people forward, just saying her name pulled her forward. And she came into the front and started screaming, and then was looking over at him, knowing that he hated this as well.
She was like, "What are you doing up here? You hate heights." It was like, "Yeah, I do," but she wanted to do it, and I didn't want to go bungee jumping with her, so like, this is a good sacrifice or whatever, compromise. And so she was like, "You would do this for her?"
She's like, "I wouldn't do this for her."
Right? So at that point, she gave me a fist bump. Mm-hmm. And from that point forward, we were friends.
Yep.
So
it was like a year and a half of being so just exactly who he said he was. Mm-hmm. And so considerate of, and not taking offense at her reaction to him, like not taking it personal, but knowing that her experience through life had led her to the conclusion she had, and that the only way to give her a different conclusion would be to be a different experience.
Right. Yeah. Corrective experiences are so important. And I've heard it said over and over again as I listen to various things that, like, when there's like a rupture and like a trauma type rupture and things like it takes almost 2 years to repair that through consistent experiences. So when you say a year and a half, like that's the first thing that popped in my head. Like it just takes time to learn a new way for someone. Makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does. That's been our experience for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lots and lots of patience. And that's just such a beautiful story. I love that.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. I want to go parasailing one day.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
It was super fun for most of me.
Yes.
For most of you.
I'm like, who inside here is afraid of the heights? I'm not sure. Like
take a little
That's
poll.
an easy way to find out.
Yeah, it is, right? Now we know.
What are some benefits to being married with one person as a singlet and one person with DID?
I think it is easier in some ways because the system isn't having to meet everybody else in another system. And so you have like less interactions that you're fielding because you're already fielding a lot when you're dealing with DID. And so I think that in part is a benefit. And also a singlet is less likely to be losing time and memory issues, so they can like prop up. Like my favorite is when we'd be at a social event and someone would be like, "Oh, hi, it's so good to see you." He knew the look on my face. Like I could hide the panic from other people, but he knew that I had no clue who this person was.
And I would just get to lean in and go, "Hey, we know them from this place." And, all this.
Oh, how helpful.
Yes. He'd be like, "Oh, it's good to see you. Haven't seen you since what? The Christmas party? How are the kids?" And I'm like,
smooth.
Yes. Like, so that's definitely beneficial.
That would be a nice benefit.
That would be nice. Sometimes we're like, now, which one of our memories are we going to say is the one that is actually remembering? No, neither of us remembered. Let's just, we're just going to roll with it.
Fine. It's totally fine.
That's funny. Yeah. And not knowing not having the experience from the other side, I can see that there's things that are beneficial and definitely things that having a partner that also has DID could be helpful in ways too. So there's, I guess there's pluses and minuses on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. We interviewed another couple that they both have DID, and that has a whole host of things that goes with it. But I think it's important, especially for people maybe who are not in a relationship with someone else that has DID, or like they're looking for somebody. They're like, well, do I have to date somebody with DID? Like how does it work? Like and getting to see all the different ways it could be.
Yeah. This is a needed perspective. We appreciate you
Yes,
both
we
talking
appreciate
about
you
it.
sharing as much as you do, because I know it's hard, I think, for people to figure out how to navigate relationships.
Very much.
It's hard enough if you don't have DID. Like, oh my goodness, like there's just so many more layers to work through.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
One thing that I would say is when you have a partner who doesn't have DID, if you both have DID, it's probably a given you're both in therapy. And if you have a partner who doesn't have DID, they might be like, oh, well, I don't need no. If your partner has DID, you should find you a therapist, because you're going to have stuff come up that you need to talk to somebody about. And it may not be beneficial to talk to your partner. Like, had he come to another altar and been like, oh, wow, that JA, huh? We would have all been like, whoo, that would not have helped anything.
Right.
But that was a hard situation for him, as well as he handled it. And it really benefits a singlet partner to have somebody that they can talk to and can walk them through the more difficult aspects.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, because there's just so much you just don't know if you don't have DID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And supporters need support too, just saying.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So what has been the biggest challenge in your relationship with dealing with having multiple selves?
I think it's probably on Jonathan's end, the whiplash, because from one moment, his experience of his partner can be someone who's very loving and cuddly and playful, to someone who can't be in the same room with him. And like the triggered switches, like there's no way to predict. Like, we could have plans. And that was actually the first time JA took a car ride with him, is like he and Jenna had a date planned, and
it was with other people, so we couldn't just cancel.
Right. And JA gets triggered in, and there's not a switch out happening. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? Should I just go? And she was like, no, I'll go. Like, I can do this. But it was very difficult. And so the plans for that evening, it went very different than anyone had been expecting it to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that really can be a jarring experience to, when you switch back and forth and like, what's happening, or what am I getting today or in this moment?
Yeah,
it definitely can. And, it's definitely, you have to be, you not only have to be ready for that to happen, but you also have to respond in a positive way as well. So it's like, it's not, oh, we were supposed to go on a date, we found that for healing, like, it just seems like when different altars are able to spend more time in the front, that it seems like their healing comes from being able to experience life like in the front.
Yes.
And so, like, it's so very important for them to be able to come and live life out.
And then have whatever experiences life brings. Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's something where there's always kind of, making sure, like, I got very good at reading body language.
Yes.
So there was even a time where we were cuddled on the couch watching a documentary or something. And I just felt just kind of her body just kind of changed, like just in terms of how she was holding herself on the couch. And I knew instantly, I was like, hey, Caleb. And he was like, how did you know it was me?
Because there was no visual, there was no auditory. We were actively watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like so affirming to be recognized just by the energy, the way your presence, just to be recognized by your presence. When you don't have your own body,
Mm-hmm.
it can be so frustrating as a multiple to be like, this is me and I'm different. And to be called out like that was so like stability building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say validating.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so. Very much so.
But it's something that I knew I needed to do because, I needed to be ready. I don't know. I just felt like I needed to be ready if somebody came out, that if we were relaxing, cuddling on the couch, and somebody came out that was very not comfortable with that, like I would need to be ready to respond in a way that was not triggering or, in a way that was positive. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is where the supporter being in therapy is so important too, because sometimes it takes your most fully mature adult self to be able to respond in the best way, and if you're not taking care of yourself, it's very easy to let your own inner child or inner teenager or whatever take over and have reactions. And the response definitely seems to be really important to how things go.
And I can't say that I got it right all the time. I wish I did, but but having somebody to talk to about it was definitely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Figuring it out. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is restorative, to find that you can have a relationship breach and then a repair, that having an upset isn't an end. It doesn't end in, it doesn't have to end in separation or violence or anything, that like all relationships can have breach and repair. Just learning that experience itself is healing.
Yeah, it really is. I remember the first time like doing a repair, and this was with my therapist actually. Like, there was a little bit of a breach, and then we were doing a repair, and it was just kind of this like, we can fix things. Like, what's that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. In what ways do you feel you support each other in your relationship?
Just, I think I would say that we support Jonathan in absolutely being here for him, for who he is, and however that looks like in our relationships. So like, each one of us would interact with him in a way that was like, so we had Lil, and she would want to play games with him. She would want
watch
to
Disney movies,
watch movies with him. And so like all of us built relationships around like what was a good interaction for them, and
a connection we had together on whatever level.
Yeah. And even the alters that were more hesitant about like him in the beginning were still like, okay, have you, did you eat, did you drink, did you like whatever? So they were still in the way that they could, like trying to support him as a person without also like violating who they are. So
yeah, JA is the one who's like, you need to drink more water. You're not drinking enough. You're dehydrated.
She was like, you have to take care of yourself because these other people in the system really like you, and it would hurt them if you weren't doing well. So
that's awesome.
Drink some water.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think that's also a really good example of like that internal cooperation, right? Like, even though she had some qualms about men, but like she knew how much it meant to everybody else. Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say me supporting just looks like just being open to uh, everybody and meeting them where they are at the time. You know, yeah, I really wanted everybody to feel safe and at home in the body. And yeah, just, you know, some were definitely easier than others, but, you know, it was just very important to me that was there, because I couldn't imagine like being in a house married to a man uh, with kids and feeling like you didn't belong there.
Right.
You know, to be trapped in a situation that wasn't yours. Um, you know, so I wanted them to be as welcome as possible.
And I think that really was like so healing, because when at the very beginning, like Jenna was not okay with DID and with the altars, and she would be going off about like E or Anthony or whoever, and Jonathan would be like, well, I don't know, I like them for this, that, and the other. And his comfort level and his acceptance like allowed her to like take a breath and see it from a different angle, and start to be able to accept as well. And so it was really helpful. My therapist said on many occasions, like, you're progressing through healing very quickly for someone with this disorder. And I think a lot of that was the way Jonathan was responding, because there was less denial when he's like, oh no, I have met these people. Like, so anytime the denial would hit, which like frequent, you know, he'd be like,
Yes.
no, like, you definitely have this. I've met them. There's no, it's fine.
Mhm.
And then when there would be bumps with an alter, like, he would advocate for both sides, you know, like, it was very, very helpful.
It's like having an external mediator.
Yeah. Like-
It really feels that way sometimes.
Well, and it seems like he helped use kind of shift perspectives when needed, you know, like,
Yes.
yeah, see it from an outside perspective. That's great.
I mean, that's something I kind of said in the last video I made was like, I highly recommend you get get an alter, a part, or a self that can be the mediator between your parts. Like, I recommend everybody has a mediator, but you got one on the outside. So that worked out really nice. Yeah. I kind of want to, I mean, the next question might kind of go with this question I kind of just had formulate in my mind as you were talking. So like the question says, would you share a moment in your relationship that made a difference in your healing journey? And it feels like we kind of answered that a little bit already, you know, but I would like a little bit more, if you could, if you're willing, like talking about making everyone feel welcome and feel safe in the house. Like, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes things just as simple as they had their own things. You know, like I would get a stuffy for, you know, like Lil had a stuffy, Caleb had a stuffy. You know, that was theirs. This is theirs. JA, this was, I think, on that same trip. After we became friends in the parasailing extravaganza, I took her shopping, and I was like, you know, you've got to wear Jenna's stuff all the time or other people's stuff. Like, you know, like you should have your own. And so she went and she like picked out one thing, and I'm like, is that all you're getting? Like, you know, so eventually got her to pick out like 4 or 5 things that were hers, and they were in the closet, and those were hers. And so, and some of the others, you know, had clothes and or scents. Like we were looking at, you know, this company that makes these scents and everything. It's like on Etsy. So somebody just makes these scents. And that we were trying to figure out what we were going to get. And then we saw that they had a sample pack that had 24 cents in it. And I was like, oh, we got to get that because not everybody's going to like it. And so, having that to where everybody had their own scents that were picked out, and like the tobacco honey that it was Anthony, right?
Yeah.
That likes the tobacco honey. So like different scents that, that they got to have for themselves. But I think that's the thing where like physically they had, when they were in the front, they weren't just in a place filled with everybody else's stuff. Like they had their things too.
Well, so even more on that, like he really created space so whoever was fronting, it doesn't matter really. Like, yes, we might have had plans for the evening, but it was like, okay, well, how do you want to interact with those plans? And so it wasn't like this is my life and I wasn't expecting you and it's an intrusion. It's oh, well, hey, welcome to the night. This is what we had planned. Like,
what do you want to do?
What do you want to do?
And sometimes it was coloring, and sometimes it was documentaries that Debbie liked watching. So
especially those who were very uncomfortable in the body, finding things that made them feel a little bit better. Like he was very good at making space for that. I remember one time we were with friends who were not aware of the DID. So we were with friends with our kids and their kids, and we were all out on a hike, and Debbie came to the front, and like Jonathan noticed, like he tracked it right off, and he was like, hey, why don't you just go ahead and hang back? Because Debbie very much loved nature, but was extremely uncomfortable with interactions. He was like, why don't you just hang back and I'll let them know that you're just going to take your time and enjoy the trail. And so making that room and recognizing and accepting, not like, oh my God, we're out with friends. Can someone else switch in? No, be like, okay, like this is what's going on. And here's a way that you can like still enjoy the time with us. And that was really such a like special and supporting moment to know that even though he didn't like want to interact, that he was really uncomfortable in the body, that there was still a moment in all of that could be made for him to just exist as comfortably as he was able to. So stuff like that was so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, making your home and your experiences, whoever is out, like tailored towards them, and I don't know, it just gives a sense of acceptance for all of yous, and that the life is all of yours.
Yeah,
exactly.
like I've always just strongly believed in like whoever is out for a reason. So like go with the flow. Like we don't need to try and force or change it, and like trusting, like the process sometimes of like whoever is out. They need that experience, whatever's happening there. That's just a beautiful way of doing it, like not having a panic, like, oh my gosh, you're not the one that's supposed to be here for this right now, but like here we are, like, and just go with it.
Yeah.
Like even though JA was afraid of heights, and then there she is out parasailing, right? Like you just go with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it became an incredible like bonding moment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Jonathan, in what ways do you feel your life is better with Gianu System in it? And Gianu System, in what ways do you feel like your life is better with Jonathan in it?
Well, I kind of touched on this earlier a little bit, but I mean, it's just exciting, and it's, don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of hard moments and a lot of times where there's things that happen that are upsetting, and things that you have to look and go, you're looking at your spouse, and there's all the memories and the feelings and the everything that are wrapped up in this person that you're looking at, but you have to separate that. And so there are hard times, but I feel like the good way outweighs any of the difficulties. I know her on a level that is so much deeper than I think anybody gets the opportunity to know somebody. When someone is separated into parts, and you have a part that holds anger, or you have parts that hold these other things, and you interact with that, just that, you're interacting with that anger in its pure form, really. Of It's not it's somebody who doesn't care if they hurt your feelings, and like, speaking of JA,
Yeah.
like, but you're interacting with that in its purest form, where, like, normally a person would, like, try to censor themselves or try to whatever to preserve the relationship or whatever. And while it's incredibly difficult and sometimes painful, I think it's a rare opportunity that I wish other people had the opportunity to experience, because you're really getting to know each part. Everybody has parts, and so you're getting to interact with each part of them in its pure, unfiltered manner, and there's just something about that pulls you a lot closer to somebody than you typically would be if you let it.
Yeah, you just know them at such a deeper level.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then you're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
Or did you already?
No, I didn't. Like, I was just following your story, and I've forgotten the question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, how is your life better with Jonathan in it?
Oh gosh, I literally did not know relationships could be like that. I had my examples, and my examples were not good examples. And I thought I was approaching relationships with a realistic view. And I did not know that they could be so supportive and understanding, and that communicating could bring you closer instead of, like, be something that was threatening. I had no idea that you could be so vulnerable and open with somebody and it be a soft place. It's like just fantastic. And the realist in me has told him that should he pass before I do, I'm like not even going to try and find another relationship, because I was like, no, I have watched other relationships. I don't know that anybody else is going to live up to this.
I told her, if I'm able to, I'll send you someone from the afterlife, so
Right?
you'll be okay.
Like, that's the only way that's happening. I'm the introvert to balance his extrovert. I'm
Right.
not going out and meeting people. I have no interest. So yeah, he has just been a fantastic and stable, supportive influence. Just an amazing friend and partner. Beyond what I would have even put in a fairy tale, to be honest.
Yeah, I love how you use the word. I thought I was setting myself up for realistic relationship, right? Like that word realistic there. Like, and I think that's something that's hard. Like when you have DID, like there's this history of trauma, and there's a history of chaos,
Yes.
and family of origins and so forth. And so, like, there isn't an example of what a relationship or healthy relationship should look like. And so, like, we think we know what's realistic, but that's not actually true, So, like,
Yes.
what really is realistic, right?
Yeah. That can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people.
Yeah, and I think it's, hopeful for people to hear this, right? That, we are what we thought was a realistic expectation. That's just not actually what reality is, that there are a lot of people that have wonderful, healthy, secure relationships, even if DID is part of the picture.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So hopeful.
It is hopeful, and that's why we're doing this whole season on relationships. Like, no, you can have a good relationship. It's totally possible.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So next question, getting into some more intimate details. So what are some ways you all create a safe enough experience around intimacy?
One of the things I try and tell people is you have to really understand continuous enthusiastic consent.
Absolutely.
Because like if an alter switches in that isn't verbal, or if a little switches in and is confused and trying to mask, like this is a situation where you really have to be aware of your partner, be able to do verbal check-ins with them. And it's not just like most married people can have the idea of what do they say? Unspoken continuous consent, I think, is something like that, where like, oh yeah, we're married, like whenever, like you can broach intimacy and it'll be fine. With someone with DID, even if you have broached intimacy and it was fine and like all systems go, green lights across the board, like you can be in the middle of and something trigger another alter and have to step back, which can be extremely frustrating for a partner. But like you have to really understand consent, because it's so important, not just for intimacy to go well with someone with DID, but to be a healing factor of, because for most of us, consent was something that was not given, was ignored, was breached. And so to have a partner to be attuned to, checking in with, and aware of is needed and healing.
Yeah, and it actually, I mean, I really learned what enthusiastic continuing consent was through this, and working through with my therapist and all that kind of stuff, where, like, yeah, I mean, there were times where it was just like, you instantly just have to stop, throw the covers over, and now it's cuddle time, or it's, whatever, like just depending on whatever happens, to whatever, whoever got brought out in the moment.
Sometimes pillows then go in between bodies because that altar is not comfortable. The few times Jonathan was like, should I go sleep on the couch with that?
Yeah.
Like, and to be able to be attuned and to be understanding, like, it's difficult. I think that's one of the more difficult aspects for a partner of someone with DID.
But it should be something that everyone should be, willing to practice. And I think, I think it's advice, no matter what the relationship looks like, to be able to have check-ins throughout anything that's going on, and just, are you still good,
Yeah.
I think it's just a very, very important thing, no matter what, but especially when you could inadvertently re-traumatize parts, through that as well, like in a very violating way.
Yeah, and without meaning to. So like it's just definitely extra care has to be built into intimate relationships.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what I'm hearing is going back to that awareness, like knowing who is out, even just feeling the energy of the shift, especially because in those moments, like that freeze response can hit really hard, and the partner may not be aware that a freeze response is happening.
Yeah.
And you don't always know, like I could tell there was a shift, but you don't always know who it shifted to. So being an instant, okay, stop, like
check in,
are you okay?
Yeah.
Who is it?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And even with building in things like the table exercises where you go like, okay, guys, we're going to have adult time. Just so you know, anyone who doesn't like, all the littles need to go to bed, all of this sort of thing. Even doing those sort of activities, you still have unexpected things happen.
Right.
So like you can build in as much security as you can, as much cushion as you can, and switches will still happen. Triggers will still happen. And sometimes in very unexpected ways.
Well, I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about when Lil's elephant was on the bed, because when you made the bed, you put her elephant in between the pillows.
Yeah.
And so, she from back there saw the elephant,
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what was going on, but saw the elephant and was like, ooh, I want my elephant.
Yep.
And there she was, so just even something as simple as that you would never think in a million years, oh, we got to hide all the stuffies.
Right. This we know.
Very aware.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think there were some really good things there. Doing the internal meeting exercise, but realizing that it's not going to go as perfectly as you think it will, and really being aware of those body shifts, paying attention to the energy, and a lot of check-ins. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the most important thing you have learned about intimacy as you heal from trauma?
Okay, so I'm going to give a specific example, but it's not like a graphic example. So on the next step from consent, I would say, is agency, knowing not only do you give your yes or no, but you have agency on whether or not there's follow through on that. When we were doing a lot of trauma processing and stuff was coming up that was disruptive to intimacy. And so Jonathan and the system didn't know what things would look like going forward, because we had opened a box that was very tender and raw, and we knew that things were going to be tender and raw for a while. My therapist recommended something called sensate focus, which is basically it starts with touch that is non-sexual, and then slowly progresses over the course of weeks. And so for us, we started that exercise with just trying to be in our body while being touched at all. We had gotten to a place where we were just so raw and so easy to dissociate. And we found an odd trigger point that's not necessarily a sexual area, and immediately brought up a memory to be like, oh, well, that's why that's a trigger point for us. And was just having so much trouble staying in the body. And Jonathan was like, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try every now and then, because we're still working with just simple touch, okay, so I'm going to touch this area, and why don't you smack my hand away and say, don't effing touch me? Censored for viewers.
Because she would quietly, she was like, please stop, or don't touch it, or whatever. And I told her, no, tell me you mean it,
Yeah. And I was like, well, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to say this rough with you. And he was like, I need you to be able to say it with me, so I know that if you got into another situation, you could say it to somebody else, with that kind of meaning and force behind it. And so we spent, I don't know how long that night of really me being able to forcefully push back and yell. And it was so empowering and healing. And especially because there was a trigger point to it, a memory that I associated when he was there, to be able to reclaim that spot and be like, don't touch me. And to get mad and to get mean with it was so healing, to feel that agency. So beyond the say no thank you and him consent to say absolutely not, like that is something that like I could feel it then echoing through all of us, and has continued to be like such a foundational piece of healing in our area of intimacy.
That is beautiful.
That's
I think that's an
powerful.
amazing exercise to try. I mean, I can think of times in therapy, obviously not about sex stuff, but like my therapist wanting me to be able to say no. And it's like, I can't, like, everything just shuts down. And like, I think this could be a very powerful exercise. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. I think our listeners maybe could try this, you know?
Yeah. It's, you know, taking the power back, I think, is beautiful. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage them, if they do try it, like, it's okay if it takes several tries for you to be able to say anything at all, because, you know, when saying no historically brought more danger to you, like, it's very hard to say anything at all at first, which is part of what made it so powerful, I think, to get from the I can't even say anything to the I can yell, I can scream it, and makes for more safety.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Oh, I think I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
Ooh, love it.
We could tell how impactful that was for you and how, important that was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's my favorite thing today. Okay. What is one thing that you wish you had known at the beginning of your healing journey that would have been helpful for your relationship?
You want to go first?
I mean, there's so much that I wish I would have known. So much that I know now that I would love to go back and apply. Even before therapy and before all this, knowing that for 15 years, she never got angry at me. That's not normal. It's not normal for someone to have a whole emotion missing. I mean, it was kind of great that we went 15 years without having a fight. Like, who could say that? But it wasn't healthy to go 15 years without having a fight. There were so many things that we've talked about after the fact that, looking back, there were things that she didn't tell me because she didn't feel safe telling me. That, you know, like if I would have known that, hey, the fact that she never gets angry at me, that's a problem. You know, if I would have known that, maybe it could have been better sooner. But, you know, I look at stuff like that and a part of me goes, woulda, shoulda, coulda. You know, my therapist loves to tell me that should is a shaming thing. And so she said, you know, you need to remove should from your vocabulary. So I try. But there's so many things that I do look at and say, I should have done it that way. But I didn't have all the information that I needed to have to deal with that at the time. And I probably wouldn't have dealt with that anger in a healthy way. And so that probably, it had the potential to be devastating to our relationship because anger was such a big trigger for her that if I responded in kind, you know, to an anger, you know, that probably would have been devastating to our relationship. And so, you know, I can look at it on both sides of the coin and see the things that I wish I would have known sooner, but I feel like I know that to be able to share it in things like this so that maybe somebody is listening to this and going, oh yeah, there's a whole emotion missing there. Maybe there's something to that. And I just hope that by sharing the things like that it can be better sooner for someone else. But it took just as long for us as it needed to. And that's also something I would encourage somebody would be that, you know, you do the very best you can do with the information you have at the time. And that's okay. You know, if we all would have bought Google stock 30 years ago. If we, I mean, you deal with the best information that you have at the time, and you have to give yourself the, what's the word I'm looking for? Grace. Yes. You have to give yourself grace that you did the best you could with the knowledge you had at the time, but also know how important it is that you don't just stay there stagnant, never trying to learn, never trying to grow. And so that's an important piece too. Yeah. I don't know if that I got off on a tangent. I don't know if that answered the question, but
yeah, absolutely.
That did. Yeah. What you would have wished you had known at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's beautiful, because you're right, you can't go back and change things, but if you hadn't, how would it be different? Would it be different in a better way? Maybe not. It's okay the way it has unfolded so far, right?
Yeah.
If I could go back, I would definitely have started therapy earlier. Yeah. Same, I didn't experience anger, and I thought I was just chill. That's cool. Man, must be weird getting mad about stuff. Maybe they should, get better. I don't know. So I would love to have gotten into therapy earlier. I was reading self-help books. It's fine. Totally the same thing.
But we were able to take that information, and at 15 and 13, we got our kids in their own therapy. So yes. they see a therapist every 2 weeks, and they get to work on their stuff.
Yep. That
either they don't feel comfortable sharing with us or don't really want to share with us. And the things that they're experiencing in their life, they have a healthy output for, and so outlet for. And so, even that is something where we're able to make the next generation better just by the things that we learned.
Yeah,
absolutely. Learning from it.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Love it.
Gianu System, you have an amazing presence on social media, and of course we follow you. You mentioned on social media about a recent fusion experience you had in your system. We would like to hear from each of you on how this fusion has impacted your relationship, if you're willing to share.
Absolutely. When it happened, it started very soft. And so as a system, we were noticing changes, but it wasn't a jarring change. It was just a closer and a closer and a closer and less barriers. And by the time that it was oh, I think this is fusion, it was well underway. The last distinct conversation that was heard in the headspace, we were drifting off to sleep, and J.A., who had been talking to E for at least a year about personally her fusing with Jenna, because she was it's not healthy for Jenna not to have access to anger in her day-to-day life. It's not safe for us. She needs that protective influence. I think she and I should fuse. And E had been resistant for a variety of reasons. She was I don't know that this would be good for us. We had been doing a lot of trauma processing, and J.A. brought it up again. And we're drifting off to sleep, and J.A. and E are in the headspace. J.A.'s being hey, I think based on the things that we've recently processed, and me and these alters are getting along together now, I think that maybe we can relook at fusion. And he was I think we can try that. And it was gonna just be her and Jenna, but things snowballed, and they in a good way. And I don't know that everyone has access to this, but there was very much a sense of if this isn't good for us, we can undo it. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't a bam permanent thing. It was this soft, gradual lead into that was if at any moment this is bad, how we were before is fine, and we can do that. So we were already into it when we were aware enough to be hey, I think I think that we're experiencing a fusion of everybody. And it was not our intent. That was never our therapeutic goal. And Jonathan's response was so lovely, because he was like, I don't like, that sounds sad. I would miss people, and I don't know that, like, I like this, and but like, whatever y'all gotta do, like, but like, it's gonna be sad.
Yeah, I was sad. I was saddened by the thought of it, of not having the individual altered, and having my individual relationships that I had built with them all these years. I was sad, and still is sad, to a little bit, but also scary, because gotten used to the new normal, like the way things were, and I've found them to be better, and I didn't want to go back. Like, I wanted to move forward, and move forward with all of my people, and but while I still do miss each individual, I see glimpses. I see an excited Lil, when she sees something that she thinks is really cool. Like, I see the look, like, and she's not all there, but I see her. And like, we were out on a date last night, and I saw Anthony, and he wasn't in the front, but like, I caught him, like he was there. And so, it's those glimpses that let me know it's okay, that fusion is not a cutting off of parts.
Yeah, it's not a loss.
That's what happened before.
Yeah.
This is everybody working together so smoothly that now it's just all a blended, like a bunch of different paint colors that were all just kind of swirled together, where you can kind of see, oh, there's a little red there, there's a little blue there, but most of it is just kind of mixed in. And so it's been hard on me, but that was never the goal. Fusion was never the goal. The goal, the focus for all of us has been that we want health, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
And so being okay with that means that you got to be okay when they all fuse together too. Because if that's what health looks like, then that's what we got to be okay with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's something that kind of just naturally happens. You don't plan on it. On a personal level, I'm also going through this. I'm experiencing fusion at this point, and it's a slow, gradual thing for me as well. And I just appreciate you saying your personal experience, because I feel very connected to a lot of what you just described. And I think it's something that is scary for a lot of systems to think about, that haven't had this experience so far, and it's kind of a difficult conversation to have, with people that are newly diagnosed or kind of in the middle of it. But I just want to reassure people, that it's something that naturally happens when it happens, if it's going to happen. It's not something you could say, oh, well, I'm gonna fuse with my parts, and you plan it, and this part's gonna fuse with this one, and this. It just doesn't. Yep. That's not the experiences I've been hearing from people. So I appreciate you explaining that.
Yeah, and like I am very aware that my experience of it has been different than his experience, because I've told him, like, internally, it's been a feeling of fullness. So like he was saying before, the dissociation is cutting off. This is very much a fullness and a togetherness. And so I wasn't, and I is such a tricky pronoun now, because like I was like, to say I doesn't just encapsulate, like this altar or that altar, but like I wasn't feeling a lack of anybody, because there was everybody. There was the presence and the fullness. But for Jonathan, it took time to where he could see, yes, oh, I saw I saw, okay, everybody's there. Like we're
Everybody's
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, everybody's okay.
Right.
That's beautiful to know. Everybody's there and everybody's okay. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you were describing how you could still see the different parts of you still, like they get activated. They see something they like in the environment and your face lights up. But it's just like you as a person with that's a multiple, you experience it differently. It's like everyone's there, and it is a very good feeling. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, what advice would you give to other couples who are navigating DID?
First, get your own therapists, each of you. Like,
yeah.
And I realized,
have we mentioned therapy?
Right? Have you heard of therapy? And I know some people have been like, oh, it would be nice to have therapy money. We did not have therapy money, but there's lots of ways you can get free therapy in the United States. Like a lot of colleges, if they offer a counseling program, their students have to be able to get practice hours in. And those students are supervised, and we actually got really good care, like cutting edge care, because they had all the newest and had just learned all the newest. So like there are ways to get it. Oftentimes there's at least 2 places in our town that have grants, so they can treat people who don't have the money or don't have insurance, but it's still like high quality care. They're still getting paid for it. They've just gotten a government grant. So you can ask places like the United Way might know where in your town or where locally. But therapy, the right therapist makes a huge difference. And so if you're having a experience in therapy that doesn't like that may not be the right therapist for you.
And there's a power dynamic there. So people think that, well, it might just be me if I'm not feeling comfortable with some, maybe I just need to keep moving forward, because they know what they're talking about. But you should have the power there.
You're hiring this person.
You're hiring this person to help you. And if you are not feeling comfortable
or helped,
then it's time to find somebody different.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the student interns, having just graduated recently, and I'm a registered, mental health counselor intern. Graduate students can do really great work, and they have supervision. They're meeting regularly with their peers. They are up to date on the latest textbooks and everything. So, I would like to encourage people, just because the idea is complex doesn't mean that you couldn't get help from a student intern for sure. And there's a lot more people with DID becoming therapists, and now we're all in this intern status. So don't be turned off by that idea that somebody's not fully licensed yet. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Garden System has lived experience, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, people are still being taught in school that DID is so rare you probably never meet somebody with it. So we're going to spend maybe an hour of all of your time talking about it, because it's probably never going to happen. And so that can make it a little bit difficult in the beginning, but it's finding the right person who's open to discussing it, and it's important.
Yeah. And with my experience, I made sure to talk about it all the time with my classmates and teachers, professors, and it came up quite a bit. I know the supervisor I work for, when she was in college, and this was a long time ago, their professor worked with it. So they showed videos and really pushed it. So, I think there is a little bit of change starting to happen with recognizing that this is not nearly as rare as, we all once believed it was. So, yeah. Yeah, I was going to say something.
And
but I forgot.
just knowing we could all be a part of the change by talking about it.
Right. Yeah. We
Yes.
just got to talk about it. Be like, we are here. We are here, you know? That's what I was going to say. Like, and the other thing, like if you see a student intern, you know, or even a registered intern, like because we're at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, like people give us free consultation. Like I needed to get help with like eating disorder stuff. And I was like, hey, I'm a student. Can you help me? And they like didn't charge me to do the consult. So like students sometimes have a little more access than the licensed people too. So yeah, don't be afraid of that.
Yes.
One thing I also wanted to mention on that same question is just kind of emphasize the importance of really keeping relationships separated. That when I was going to say when you meet a new alter, but when an alter chooses that they want you to meet them, then you're going to have to start with the basics. You know, if you met somebody on the street the first time, hey, what kind of movies do you like? What's your favorite color? You know, like you're going to have to just start from scratch. I've got a friend that I've met not too long ago that been talking to, and they said, you asked such good questions. It's like, I'm used to it. I'm used to asking questions. But you know, yeah, it doesn't transfer. And that's so important for a supporter to know is, you know, each relationship is an individual relationship that you're building with that person. And, you know, you have to keep that in mind at all times.
That's good information. Yeah. Yeah, because that just depends on how much experience that particular self has with interacting with other people out. Sometimes they're not always out. And it is like starting over, you know, just because they know, okay, I know you get along with so-and-so, but what about me? You know?
Okay.
All right.
So one of our goals for season 3 of this podcast, where we're focusing on relationships, is that we might provide hope to those that have either found relationships to be challenging when having DID, or they have been told that they will not be able to be in a long-term committed relationship because of DID. What hope can both of you offer to those that are struggling or are fearful today?
Well, I know when the diagnosis was still fresh, I was just upset. I felt like I was a burden to all of my relationships. Like, who would choose to be in a relationship like this? This is just so much to ask of anybody. And to find that wasn't like, that was my perception of being in a relationship with a system. That was not the perception of my family, my friends, or Jonathan. We're coming up on our 23rd anniversary, and our marriage after diagnosis was so much healthier and better than it was pre-diagnosis, and it has only continued to grow. Like, we are closer, we know each other better, we are more in love now, like, than we've ever been. So this diagnosis does not preclude you from having happy, healthy, functional relationships, like, at all. And it doesn't make you a burden, and it doesn't make you someone that people wouldn't want to have relationship with. I actually found that to be the opposite. Like, when I would finally, like, when we'd meet new friends and when I'd finally tell them about the diagnosis, they were usually intrigued, usually like, oh, can I meet the others?
Yeah.
And so rather than being a burden, it was usually something where other people were like keen to interact and know the other people in the system. So yeah, it's definitely, there are difficulties. There are, like, the PTSD, the triggers, all of that, the forgetting about plans, all of that is difficult. But these are things that are navigatable. You can still have, and you still deserve loving, healthy relationships.
And that's what I would say, picking back up on where you left off, was everyone is worthy of love. And everyone, no matter what you have, there's somebody out there that is just 100% in. Just if for no other reason, just because you are the way you are. And so don't limit somebody else before you give them the opportunity to respond.
Yeah.
Don't say, well, I'm such a burden. How do you know? You may be a burden to somebody, but you're not going to be a burden to everybody. There are going to be people that are going to be open and intrigued and not love you in spite of it, but maybe love you because of it. Mm-hmm. And so everyone is worthy of love. And it's just, keep your standards high.
Yes.
Yes.
You don't have to settle. This is not a scarcity mindset. Absolutely.
If somebody doesn't respond well, kick them to the curb and let's try the next one, because for everyone who doesn't respond well, there's another person who's going to be right there in your corner. So, you're not destined to be alone.
Not destined to settle.
You're not destined to settle. You can have a rewarding, fulfilling relationship that could make singlets jealous.
Yes.
So, and you deserve it.
That's beautiful. I wholeheartly agree with every word.
Yes. I wish I could, virtually fist bump y'all. There we go. Point.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So where can people find and follow you?
I am at Gianu System, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, YouTube. So on Instagram and TikTok, I have my shorter form videos. I do a lot of answering of questions. So if a lot of people have questions and they'll leave them on my page and I just make a video response to them. On YouTube, we have longer form videos where you can watch our journey from the very early days. You can see J.A. ranting about him because it was very much in the beginning just us making videos to us. This was our way of communicating. And after we'd been doing that for about a year, our most shy and protective ultra was I think this would be beneficial because we didn't know it would get better. And looking back at these videos, we see how far we've come. I think it would be beneficial to put these where other people in the same journey can see it gets better. So it's very much like a vlog style from the beginning to now.
Love it.
So that's on YouTube.
Awesome.
Great.
And I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Splendid DID _supporter. But I can tell you that I'm not very active on there, partly because I felt the need to answer everyone, and it was very overwhelming and put me in a place that was not healthy for me. So I had to step back. But I still have people reach out to me, in my DMs, and I welcome that. And so while I'm not at the point where I feel like I can continue to make content and things. Hopefully I will get there, but feel free to reach out to Gianu System or to me in messages, and I'm more than happy to help in any way I can.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today, sharing your story so openly with all of our dear listeners. I think I would like to reiterate, we talked a lot on the positive, noted that things were hard and difficult. There were a lot of things we went through, and just reassuring people that it's worth it. It's worth it to go through the hard.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. Well, thank you again.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you for hanging out with a trio of multiples and a superstar splendid supporter. We are honored to have multiple sponsors for Season 3. You can find links to each sponsor's webpage in the show notes of every episode and on our website under the Listen to Our Podcast tab. The Institute for Creative Mindfulness, one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, is directed by Dr. Jamie Plus Marich, the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural and offers the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We felt so validated when we were able to authentically participate in this training as Garden System. Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers. Dr. Wendy Aporta with Bearings Therapy is a marriage and family therapist specializing in military and first responder individuals, families, and couples. She is proficient with clients experiencing PTSD, CPTSD, and dissociative disorders.
For her, helping those with traumatic experiences is not just a job, it is a vocation. She is experienced in multiple modalities and utilizes whatever is best for her clients' needs. She stays abreast of the latest research and treatments to provide the best possible outcomes for her clients. Call Bearings Therapy today, 214-892-2158. From your hosts, Drew
and Garden System.
Thank you for listening to A Couple of Multiples, the reality of dissociative identity disorder. This podcast is intended for educational purposes and is not a replacement for therapy.
Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapeutic relationship with the hosts or any guest speakers.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear what you enjoyed the most.
You can visit our website at acoupleofmultiples.com for additional information, including how to join our new online paid community called Hearts Multiplied, to book a consultation session, to access additional resources, and to also subscribe to our mailing list to receive future updates.
Remember, every system is unique, and your experiences may be different from ours, and that's okay. You matter and are loved for being all of yous.